Dr. Dorenzo, board certified clinical psychologist here. Believe it or not, there is a subfield of social psychology called epidemic psychology, which describes the pattern of individual and collective fear and behavior that is separate from the actual disease during an epidemic or pandemic. The late Phillip Strong, a medical sociologist, coined epidemic psychology in the 1990s. Understanding how we think, feel, and behave when we're faced with a significant crisis like a pandemic that challenges global social order is crucial if we want to avoid past mistakes and effectively work together as a global people using kindness, reason, science, and technology to eradicate this disease. Let's talk about these psychological phases of fear and panic, stigma and moralizing, and then 3 calls to action that move in sometimes messy and destructive waves. So the primary or first response is the fear and dread. One experience is suspicion and fear that one may have the disease already or that you're going to get sick, and there's widespread fear regarding transmission, especially when there's inconsistent and wrong information about how it gets moved back and forth. There's also great suspicion about the reality of the disease. For instance, when someone points a gun at you, your first response is usually denial, shock, and paralysis as you try to figure out whether what is happening is actually real or not. Remember that leaders are not immune to these states of disorientation. Certainly, this is the time period when leaders have to get their ducks in a row quickly. Initial panic gets resolved with authoritative data and information when new routines are outlined and there are collective and individual actions taking place. So getting out sound and consumable information is key. Unfortunately, these actions are often delayed and mixed just as they were for us. Now, the secondary response is the epidemic of explanation and moralization by blaming, stigmatizing, and discriminating. Those belonging to feared disease-carrying groups may become stigmatized, blamed, avoided, segregated, or abused. During the first wave of the bubonic plague in the 14th century, parents even abandoned their sick children, and doctors, grave diggers, and many clergy abandoned the sick. But later, during subsequent waves, they realized that this only led to higher mortality rates and people were not getting abandoned. So yet as late as the 20th century, though, we started stigmatizing the gay community in the 90s for AIDS. And yet as late as 2003, during the SARS outbreak, healthcare workers and their families were stigmatized and shunned as well. So humans are an interesting bunch, certainly. We are more irrational than rational, despite what we think about ourselves. A good understanding of disease concepts. So despite a good understanding of disease concepts, we still make really simple explanation of things and make basic assumptions based on behavior, ethnicity, and social stereotypes. We seek to avoid uncomfortable feelings of randomness, even about diseases and about dying. We avoid our sense of vulnerability by blaming other groups on deviant behavior. Even our leaders forget about science and reason and stigmatize and blame others and each other when things seem to be out of their control. So we probably should be doing a better job relying on reason in 2020, but already it seems that many of our resources and valuable time is being squandered on blame. One side of the political aisle's position is about inadequate health services and has been, and about not responding soon enough, while the other side blames other governments and different health organizations. So instead of focusing on why and how at this juncture, our focus, it's imperative it should be on the power of what. What are we doing about it right now? Now, the tertiary or third response is the epidemic of action or disease management and the realization about the complexity and fragility of our global social order. Now, this third level of response is heightened when the disease's onset is rapid or is transmitted through rapid person-to-person infection, which is what we have with the coronavirus. In this phase, the epidemic is becoming more personal, as either you're getting sick or you're learning about many others getting sick, either from the media or from personal contacts. Now, the government is also taking swift action like social distancing and shutting down the economy. This is part of this phase. So how people respond to these actions and how they are affected will determine whether they will become more susceptible to the disease or not, or even have more serious psychological problems. So with wrong information, many people even develop psychosomatic disorders where they begin to experience these disease states similar to having the disease when actually they don't have the disease at all. So at this point also, there can be fueled hysteria or great economic and welfare loss, both individually and collectively. So the tertiary response is what Trump referenced a few weeks back when he was concerned about the cure being worse than the disease. Now, we are all experiencing this tertiary response right now, along with repeated waves of the first two phases. And the impact, you guys, it's heavy, it's burdensome, especially when these pundits and the experts, they all have an agenda. Many of them have an agenda, and they want to shine, and they want to disseminate, and they do disseminate inconsistent information. We must filter the information and maintain the course, not lose positive psychological steam, or we are greatly susceptible to panic when we're not following guidelines, and we're more vulnerable to contracting the disease. So certainly every epidemic is different, and we have greatly advanced since the advent of this 1990s model, and we probably need an updated model based on the success and the willingness of our global participation and acceptance of all the necessary behavioral interventions like social distancing and everything else that's so inconvenient and burdensome. Further, knowing that humans collectively respond psychologically in similar patterns when faced with crises and academics, it's helpful. So you can't change or improve what you can't see and don't know. So we need to take the necessary action to prevent and transcend panic, discrimination, and blame, and this disease, and keep ourselves and our leaders in check. Now, being sensible and preventing panic begins with you and with those living in your home. So I just want to remind you guys to be critical consumers of information, remain reasonable, practical, purposeful, empathic of others, be fluid, self-aware. It's crucial. Keep social distancing without isolating others. Let's stay the course. We must rely upon technology and science, kindness, okay? This is not the Black Death of the 14th century, nor the Spanish flu of 1918. As you're listening to this, reports suggest there are already 70 vaccines being developed and 3 in clinical trials. We will find a cure. Be calm, care for yourself and your family as best you can. You, me, we got this, okay? Talk to you guys soon.